All right, everyone, welcome into This is a Bet. This is another game preview for BYU Cougars. They're taking on Texas Tech this week at home. Tanner, what are your initial thoughts about this game? Coming off kind of a brutal loss to TCU, we talked a lot about that one in our post-game recap. But what's your feelings going into this one? It's a home game, homecoming. It's at night. What do you feel?
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one, and I think a good amount of BYU fans are really excited. At least on Twitter, I saw people kept saying, even with the loss last week, for some reason, I'm still pumped for this game, and that's how I
Yeah.
feel. It'll still be a night game in Provo. It'll be a good game. I think and I'm predicting that it will be miles better than TCU. And if it's not, there's trouble on the horizon. But
Yeah.
I'm seeing this one being a far better game than that TCU game.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think I feel a lot better about this game than I don't know if I definitely feel better going into it than going to TCU, but I also feel like it's not going to be a repeat of what we saw last week. It's I guess you could kind of be down on BYU and feel like they're out of this game, but there's a lot of factors going into this game that make me feel more confident in BYU, despite some hiccups and the Bywater injury and other things like that. But one of the factors being, we can maybe discuss the different factors, but one factor is that Texas Tech might be on their third string quarterback. Have you heard anything about that? Does it sound like he's for sure going to be playing? Or I've kind of heard
Yeah,
it might
so
be a game time decision, but
that's what I've been trying to follow and seeing with that. When it comes to third string quarterbacks, right? You can't BYU, it puts more pressure on a need win for BYU because it doesn't matter how good that third string is. You just see it on paper and it sounds terrible.
yeah,
BYU loses in Provo to third string quarterback, you know. So it doesn't matter how good they are. You hear that third and it's like, holy moly, what's going on? BYU can't do what they did against TCU, right? You had Hoover coming in with his first career start for TCU, and he
hmm
has like the game of his life. He has like a Heisman level, just
yeah,
slinging the ball right. And so if you let that happen, if it is the third string quarterback for Texas Tech, if you let that happen, then like I said, there's lots of questions if we see a game where. So you just have to go in with the mindset of we are going to cause him to have a tough night. We're going to the defense has got to have the mentality of we are going to get interceptions off this third string quarterback. We're going to find ways to force turnovers. You got to have that mentality because you can't lose to a third string. You just can't. You got to
yeah,
make it close.
yeah. And I don't know. I have a feeling it won't be what we saw last week with TCU's backup Hoover coming in and just slinging it. They are on their third string, so not even just their backup, but third string. And from what I understand about their quarterback situation is it was Shuck, and then he was hurt, and he's likely out for the year.
Yeah.
And then Morton came in, and there really wasn't that much of a drop off between the two. They still won a couple games, even though last week, he goes down during that game. And we have is Strong, right? Is the third string?
That's what I was trying to
Yeah,
remember. I
Jake
kept
Strong.
having yeah, so
He came in and he struggled a little bit. He threw three picks in that game. Do you think BYU, like you mentioned, turnovers? Do you think this is an opportunity for the defense to kind of create some turnovers? Because in this game, I could see us getting two or more picks just based off of last week.
yeah, so I had an interesting stat with that. So if I had seen it correctly, BYU was +4 in turnover margin going into TCU or the game before that. That has since
hmm
slipped down to just zero point 0.6 per game. But I still feel like this is an opportunity where they can find ways to make turnovers with it being the third string quarterback. And Texas Tech is averaging about -1 turnover per game. So turning the ball over at least once per game, where BYU is in the positive. Only zero point 0.6, but I think that's an average. And I think this game is where they can shine again, like they did with an interception on the goal line, Sam Houston, or even in some of those other games, coming up with interceptions, getting our offense back on the field. Because I feel that the style of play we're in right now, our offense has to be scoring every drive, or at least every other, and trying to stay in it offensively, because when we're just relying on that pass game, it's you got to hope we can score and then rely on the defense to try to get something done. But I think turnovers could be a big part where BYU does pull this out if they can get those. Similar to the Cincinnati game, let Texas Tech lose the game for themselves instead of allowing them to win it. So,
yeah, I think turnovers and then being on the third string quarterback, and BYU doing pretty well this year in the turnover margin, despite that ugly loss last week. I think it's a great opportunity for them to kind of get some momentum shifts in the game. So that's the first factor I was kind of thinking of, Tanner, is the third string quarterback and then the BYU defense, kind of that matchup. And I think we both agree that we're going to see some interceptions for the BYU defense. If there's a line for that, I haven't checked, but if there's a 0.5 plus interceptions or 1.5, I'd probably take it. The second factor, Tanner.
It seems like every game for the quarterbacks it's 0.5, but it could be higher. That'd be a fun one to look up, see if what that's set at. So
yeah, maybe I'll try to look at that while we talk about the next point. But factor number 2, Tanner, is the night game. So we've talked about this a lot, mostly on the negative side, and BYU struggling in the day games. But on the flip side, BYU's really good in night games. So I think they're 19-1 in their last 20 night games. A lot of those at Lavelle Edwards stadiums. How do you feel about the night game? Do you think that plays a factor in this one?
I just love them. Love the night games. But it does play a factor. I was listing off to my dad day games I could remember we lost, and it was Arkansas last time. It was Oregon. It was Kansas. It's TCU. And it's just like continuing. All of those common factor day game. This night game, especially at Lavelle Edwards, it's BYU has about a 3.6 edge, where the average for most teams is about 2. So they've got that little step up. And looking at, let's see if I can find it. It was talking about they have an average home victory margin of 13.76. So at home, winning by almost 14, that 3.86. So that takes away the line right there if you were to say, here's what we can give BYU just for playing at home. 3.6, that's over the 3. This swings in favor of the Cougars. And that's kind of how I have it. Getting in a little pre-prediction plug is I have BYU in this one simply because I have BYU as a possible win. Not a lock, but in there because of home factor. And I really see if it's that third string quarterback, the defense finding ways to get it up. But the defense will have their hands full. I want to ask you, you got Taj Brooks. How does BYU stop him, who has been running for almost 100 yards every game, 5.5 on average per carry? What does BYU do to slow Taj down?
I don't know. I think that's kind of I was going to bring this up because I think that's factor number 3 is Taj Brooks and just how strong he is in the run game. I mean, 786 yards on the season, like you said, over 100 yards per game. He's got the ball, touched the ball over 130 times just on the ground, not even including the passing game. And then he's gotten the end zone 5 times. So he's a strong runner, and I expect I keep saying TCU, Texas Tech. We're over TCU. They're living in my head. Texas Tech, I think we're going to see them really rely on Taj Brooks, especially with Morton if he's out, their backup, and they're on Strong. I could see them really relying on Taj Brooks, and there's a good chance that it works out pretty well for them against this BYU defense. But I think we can just hope that the pass game is weak enough, and if BYU gets a little bit of a lead in this game and can force Texas Tech to kind of pass the ball, I think that's kind of their key to success. Hopefully they can show up and stop the run right away, but I don't know if I expect that fully, especially against a guy like Taj Brooks. He might be the strongest runner we've played this season. So, it's going to be interesting, but I think if BYU can get up early in this game, then force them to pass a little bit. Kind of like what happened to them last week where TCU got up early, forced BYU to get out of their game plan, and it didn't work for BYU, obviously. So, well, how do you feel about Taj Brooks? Do you think they're going to struggle with him?
Um, yeah, I think so. I think I'm really hoping it's not one of those frustrating games where it's the most frustrating is seeing a quarterback run on you. The second most frustrating thing is handoffs that go for just ridiculous amount of yards. I think his long, if I'm not mistaken, and I'd have to check, was like 38 or something. BYU cannot let him break his long this season, right? If we see something of a 40-yard, 50-yard run, something's wrong, right? And so we have to keep him under 100. We have to keep him down, which is going to be tough. I really don't know how we do it because, like you said, it seems like they're going to be relying on it, and it seems like he is the best running back that BYU has faced. Because I think Kansas was going to be one, but theirs was injured, right? Or was it? Anyways, one of
Yeah,
them.
he didn't play as much. They were split in
Yeah.
time.
So
yeah,
or it was Arkansas. That's the one where they had what was the
Rocket
or
was
whatever.
out.
Yeah. So
Rocket Sanders
this will be the
wasn't playing.
toughest. So we've got to have that. We've got to have an answer for it. Just keep it contained. Force them to the outside, kind of like TCU did with us, right? Hope that they block like BYU blocks in this game,
Yeah.
and
Serious.
we're good. So, but I think it'll just be a game time. I really don't know how you stop it.
My
Like,
worst
I don't.
my
know how to
worst
say it.
nightmare
Yeah.
my worst nightmare is we kick off the ball to Texas Tech first, and they just run it 9 times. Just move the ball down the field and score.
Hand off.
And ESPN will show that graphic where it's like this drive and it says 9 runs, 1 pass or whatever.
And then you see at halftime they
Yeah.
throw up the stats, and it's like the rush game's already upwards of, he already has 100
120
yards.
yards. Yeah.
It's just something crazy. Yeah, that's just gonna be.
And maybe there's a way where the run. I mean, they don't stop the run and they can still win this game. Let's say Texas Tech decides they want to switch it up and they throw some passes and they can pick them off. And those turnovers are going to be key, especially with how little I think Texas Tech will throw the ball. And Texas Tech is a team I usually view as a team that likes to pass.
Yeah.
But it's a little different this year, and they're really relying on Taj Brooks. So he's definitely a factor.
We got to hope what was it, the Seahawks that handed it off or threw it instead of handing it off? That's what we have to hope is even if they get to the goal line, they just decide to try to throw it over. So
yeah, if they're up early, then they have no reason to pass it, and that's where BYU get in trouble.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the last factor I had in mind coming into this is factor number 4, which is Keaton Slovis for BYU. We saw him struggle last week. We've seen him do great. I was listening to Locked On Big 12 guy, and he says about Keaton Slovis, he says, 1 in every 7 passes is an NFL amazing throw. You can't believe he made the throw. Another 1 in 7 passes is me on the field. So just somebody who looks like they don't know what they're doing. And then the other 5 out of 7 passes are just like an average run-of-the-mill quarterback. Do you agree with that assessment of Keaton Slovis?
I agree with it perfectly. And I've said it's following Zach Wilson and Jaron Hall. Jaron Hall hardly turned over the ball. Very just passes felt like they were there. And I took it for granted, right? You see the style of play, you feel confident, and then like you're saying, it's so true. Slovis steps out there and it's like, oh my gosh, he threaded the needle. And then all of a sudden, a couple plays later, it's like, where was that going? It's like there are a lot that the receivers, you can tell they're having to reach back because balls are thrown behind. But he's still good. I saw it was Ben Criddle on Twitter posted all of Finnegan's stats and was like, should he be the quarterback for Saturday? And it's like you can't turn over the reins just yet. It's not because in TCU it wasn't like it was all Slovis. It wasn't. There was really no defense. There was no offense. You can't.
And like I mentioned, the way the offense had performed 4 weeks prior to the TCU game, they set him up just to be screwed. I mean, with no
Yeah.
run game, what can you do? Oh, you can just totally defend the pass and blitz
So
and do all these things. So
give me the Cougars in this one to have an advantage, because Slovis has talked about how much he loves playing in front of the BYU fans.
yeah,
Continuously in interviews, he says, like, just enjoy the environment. He likes playing under the lights. What better time to do it than at home on a homecoming game? I think he rises to the occasion. I think he feels the energy. He plays to it. Um, that gets him going. So I see him having a good game here. So
yeah, I agree. I think it's ridiculous to already start talking about replacing Slovis with Finnegan. It was one bad game. They're 4-2. They're kind of above expectations as far as their record goes. So I think going into this game, I think you're right. I think it's a night game. Slovis is going to play the crowd, and I don't know. I just got a good feeling about it. I think BYU has some advantages and edges in this game. I think they can cause some turnovers. So getting into our picks, I have BYU +3, and I also have the over. I just think BYU can keep it close, and I actually have them winning by 3. But 3-point win isn't much, so I think it can kind of swing both ways. But I'm thinking BYU's at least within 3 points in this game. So maybe Texas Tech squeezes out a win, and they win by 3 or 2 points, and the bet just pushes. But I think I have BYU +3 in this one. What do you think for BYU? You kind of teased your bet earlier. But
yeah, I got BYU in this one. I got BYU I got BYU to cover. I got them to win by 7-10 right there. That's that nice little number. Give me 7-10. And some of the factors that I kind of looked at, one thing that will be tough is BYU is going to rely on the passing, and Texas Tech teams is averaging about 10.8. The defense is allowing 10.8 per completion. Sorry, that's Virginia Tech. Texas Tech, 11.2. So they're 33rd in the country. In other stats with passing, they're pretty meaty. They're like right in the middle, 62nd in pass yards per game and 74th in sacks. So they're going to be getting pressure. They're not going to be allowing a lot. They're right there in the middle of what college football's doing right now. So BYU's really got to step it up, but I see them doing that. I see Slovis having not a perfect game, but a game where everything feels like it's clicking. And what a heck of a week to have the run game work. Let's just pull a sleeper and figure that out. I'll put that on the back burner, but I'm going BYU. Give me the Cougars in this one, and give me the over. I wish I had the stat. I had it before for Texas Tech. It was something like 24 something per game. So they're scoring points, and then give me the Cougars to score some more. And yeah, I got the over. So
Yeah, I like how you mentioned the run game, because I was gonna say, after you're done talking, I was gonna say what was I gonna say? Oh, we didn't even mention the run game this whole time because we were just kind of giving up on it.
It's true. We're just
not bringing it up anymore.
You just say it's a joke, and then you just kind of like cross your fingers, and maybe it's not.
Yeah, because if it gets going, then you feel really good about BYU. Hopefully, it can click in like the second part of the season, because the schedule's tough.
It's just due.
They need it.
It really,
yeah.
And this is the gambler's fallacy, right? It's due, which it's never really due, but you feel like it is. Like, it just never developed in any of these games. You can't tell me we can play 12 games in a season and like not have one game where it works out. It's gotta, but it doesn't have to. But
we'll see.
It should. Gosh dang it.
Yeah, the thing is, we're not expecting it, so if it does happen, it's like a nice surprise, nice cherry on top for the game. But yeah, I think BYU's mark, if they can score over 30 points in this game, they have a pretty good shot at winning. And I can't remember what it is. This is back to the run game, but Kalani is something like undefeated or close to undefeated if we have 150 plus rush yards in a game. So it's like a mark almost for a win for BYU. But this season, I don't know if we've gotten that once. I don't think we have, even against
you want a Kalani
the
stat
teams.
I haven't touched on.
Yeah, let's hear it.
He is 16 of 17 following a loss with an average margin of victory of negative 1.5. Now, I know stats are great at predicting the past, but track record is after a loss, more oftentimes losing another. I still have him
So
winning,
what
but
is
that
that?
is something to look
16?
at.
He's lost the last 16 out of the last 17 games.
So yeah, 16. No, it's he's 16 of 17. Sorry, not 16 of 17. He's won 16. He's lost 17. Is
Okay,
what it
so he's
was.
pretty much even.
Yes, it's like
Okay, but
so.
not great. Not like a stat where it's like, oh, he's 22-2 after a loss.
Yeah, no, that's
Not one of
that's
those.
Alabama numbers. Nick Saban
Yeah.
was on there, and it was something like following a loss, they were 50 something, and it was some ridiculously low number. Like to
Jeez.
see Alabama lose back to back is like
And
so.
another negative stat here: BYU hasn't won an October game since 2021. So this year they haven't won in October yet, and then last year they didn't win in October. It's kind of been that month where they kind of just start sliding. So this game seems like really important for BYU because it kind of, if they win, it feels like a bowl game is going to happen, and if they lose, you start to question if the bowl game is going to happen or not. Do you
Yeah,
feel that
it'll
way
like
too?
it'll keep the fans in it. Okay, we saw with it was like excitement rising, loss to Kansas, win against Cincinnati, we're back, loss to TCU. Texas Tech, the excitement's back. If we can win this one, it'll carry us into that Texas loss,
Yeah.
but then we can beat West Virginia, and then the Iowa State maybe.
Yep.
But then it could lead us into the Oklahoma loss, but then Oklahoma State. It's like if we can find these ways to keep like after the losses win the game, it'll keep the fans in it because you see the win. If we drop these two, if it's a loss, it's really
Number 4 and
easy to
4.
just slippery
Yeah.
slope because the very next game is Texas. And then you're looking at 3 straight losses, and that just feels it always feels wrong to see 3 in a row. 2 in a row is even a head scratcher. 3 in a row is like something's not right. So
Yeah. I have a good feeling about it, so I think it's going to be a win. And you're right, it carries us on kind of for the rest of the season. I think we're kind of riding up Texas and Oklahoma's losses, but there's 4 or 5 other games in there that feel winnable. So why not win some of them and get to a bowl game? So,
why not win?
yeah, and if things start going bad, just throw Fettingin in there. It'll fix everything.
He's the cure.
Right?
The run game.
The run game.
will appear. It'll be like, holy cow, the way he hands it off there, it's just the game changer.
And people have mentioned this, and I've heard this as well, speaking of the run game with the quarterback, is Zach Wilson and Jaron Hall could run it a bit, and Roderick ran a lot of design runs for those players or run pass options, things like that. Do you think Roderick's offense is dependent on that, and that's why it hasn't been as good this year? Or do you think it just is the offensive line?
I hadn't even thought about that. That could be playing a big factor that, Zach Wilson, Jaron Hall were the perfect candidates for a nice little designed run.
And they wouldn't run it all the time, but it was enough to mix it up.
Like I've said, we've been throwing it deep this season, but for some reason, it just feels like we haven't thrown it as deep as much. It used to be first play of the game, I swear, every game, they drop back, deep ball to the side. And so, but then that again, they were throwing to Puka Nacua, who is killing it for the Rams right now. And so it was a little bit different. Chase Roberts has the talent, though, I feel like we can still
he's
compete.
the guy.
I just don't know if
he's the bright spot for sure.
Is Roderick changing what he used to do? Is it like, does Slovis not feel it's comfortable? I don't know. And I could totally be looking at this all wrong, and they've gone deep just as many times, but it feels like the deep ball just isn't the factor it used to be with BYU. It used to be
or it's just not working.
Deep ball was there. It was there. But I'll even say under a Bronco, you had, then again, it was Austin Collie, but you had that deep ball that just felt like, it feels like it's missing. But I don't know.
And in college football, I feel like you see the deep ball a lot. And BYU, even with Jaron Hall, Zach Wilson, right? You saw it all the time. People would always get mad that Jaron Hall couldn't throw the deep ball. Do you ever see that discourse online?
That he can't throw the deep ball.
They said he had a weak arm or whatever, but even
Yeah,
he
I
could
don't
throw
know.
him deep.
I thought he could sling it.
Yeah,
From what I
that's what I
remember,
thought too.
he was slinging it, but
yeah, people were like, he always underthrows people. But we had two really good quarterbacks, and Slovis is good. He's just not maybe to that level of consistency that we saw with Jaron Hall and Zach Wilson, because Jaron Hall was accurate. He could move the ball. We never really were too worried about him at all throughout his time at BYU. So
yeah.
I think there's just some uneasiness with BYU fans.
Yeah, it just feels like something's. So it looks like we are like the exact same for. I need to find a better stat. This is just yards per completion. We're almost the exact same. It looks like from this year and last year. But I want to see deep. What would that be under? Anyways,
Deep ball
we'll have to,
passes of 20+ yards. Maybe you should do a short video on that or something.
Yeah,
That'd be interesting.
I'll look into that.
Yeah, because it does. Maybe it's just not working as much. Maybe they've taken the shots, but they just aren't accurate balls, or they're not open. Who knows what it could be? But
Yeah,
I feel like maybe the offense has changed a little bit with Slovis just being the quarterback. I'm assuming Roderick would change a couple of things to kind of fit his style. So
yeah,
it's not a surprise and not necessarily a bad thing, but maybe that's why there's been some hiccups. So despite that, I think we'll see a good game this week, and it's kind of that game for both teams that kind of determines the rest of their season, it feels like. So
oh yeah, definitely.
this might be the biggest game BYU's had in a long time, and that's the fun part of being in the conference.
Yeah,
It actually means something.
That's the thing. It's like every game in the remaining of the season is a name you've heard of. It's a name that's out there. It's going to be a rest of the season simply because we're playing. And since this is not just a football podcast, ahead to basketball, quick plug, we're going to see those big games as well in the Marriott Center. The likes of which the Marriott Center has seen big games in a season, we'll see pretty much the most big games we've seen, which would be awesome. So anyways.
And BYU gets an extra big game at the Marriott Center to kind of open the season against San Diego State. So
yeah, that's a little rivalry.
Yeah, old Mountain West Conference days.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Well, tomorrow will be fun. Will it be watching? Are you watching it from home, or are you going?
I wish I was going. Don't have the hookups this week to go like I've had in the past.
You should get tickets. How much are tickets?
They're not crazy. I think I saw some for $38.40. It's not like the $150 to $200 for Oklahoma, but
I see some as low as $24.
Oof.
Upper Bowl.
That is tempting. Right,
Section 132.
Yeah, we didn't plan good. We should have planned a time where you and I went to a game. Maybe Iowa State.
Iowa State. We should try to go for sure.
Okay.
What week is that? I should make sure I'm here.
It's November 18th, I want to say.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Okay.
That'd be fun.
That'd be awesome.
We'll do a podcast live outside the stadium.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Like we said.
Okay,
we'll see you guys on the next one. Be sure to subscribe and like and comment. We appreciate the comments. They're always fun to see. So, any last minute message, Tanner?
No, just thank you for watching. Go Cougars.
Okay, let's go.